Hello and welcome back to the Franchise Growth Pod. My name is Belle, Director of Marketing at AC Inc. And I am back with AC herself, Angela. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. I'm glad to be here again. I get to hang out with you, and I always hear you talk about your favorites. So I know everybody's your favorite. So I'm just going to hope I'm
Is my
one of them.
favorite. Podcasting is my favorite. That's really what it is.
Now we know the truth. But yeah, and how are you doing?
I'm doing so good. Thank you for asking. Yeah, it's been a busy day, but it's actually the beginning of the week right now as we're recording, and I have a very exciting week ahead. There's just like lots of really awesome calls, and it's one of those weeks where like calls got moved around a lot, and lots of different strategies and roundtables coming up, and yeah, just really exciting. But I'm really excited to talk to you today. Actually, speaking of roundtables. That wasn't even an on-purpose segue, but we're going to use it anyways. I am so stoked to talk to you about professional development today because this is something obviously like we're obsessed with. It should honestly be an honorary core value is professional development. I feel like we're so all about it. I feel like we have some honorary core values we sometimes give shout outs to every once in a while.
Yeah, I think everybody probably does.
I think so. Yeah, I think
every
it's
culture.
probably pretty usual.
Yeah.
But professional development specifically for field coaches, which is of course the role that we deal with a lot here at AC Inc. when we're all about creating more profitability and engagement and happy franchisees in franchise systems across the globe, really. And a big part of that is helping with field coaches, and we have that in lots of different ways. But the thing that I want to talk about today is not so much, hiring new field coaches or training, but actually the ongoing professional development that comes in this type of role, because it's a very unique role. I wonder if even you want to give just a really, really brief background on your perspective on this role and kind of what brought you to it.
Yeah. And to clarify, by field coaches, we just mean anybody that's in the field directly supporting franchisees. And at AC Inc., we really believe that is the most important role in the franchise company, or at least one of the top and most important roles, because as we hopefully all know, franchise company growth, number one driver of franchise company growth is happy, engaged, profitable franchisees. Mm-hmm. So that what we see so often is that people in that role are they're either more junior, or they're not properly supported, they're not getting development, and they're expected to deal with these really big issues, including things like franchisees that don't show up because they don't think that they need the coaching or support, or franchisees that are non-compliant. Like now you're expecting somebody who, like, you might give them a tip on how to do it, but what about ongoing coaching and guidance for these people? This is what we're so passionate about. We really see a need for this in franchising, and it stems from my background of being in that role and being thrown out into the field. Oh, she knows a little bit about business, and she definitely knows about the brand, so she should be fine. And she's personable too, so that should be okay. But I didn't know how to deal with franchisees that were yelling at me and blaming me and blaming the head office for things and all that. So that's where this all comes from. I think that's what you're asking.
Yeah, and I think it is cool because it's always on my mind. We always want to provide the background that you did have experience in the field, and that's really what helped drive a lot of what has built AC Inc. to what it is today. Is because you had that experience on both the multi-unit franchisee level, having a field coach come work with you, and then also being a field coach early in your career and helping build out franchise owners' businesses and success. So it's really interesting to have that perspective, I think, when we go into conversations like this, because it provides a little more credibility. You're very clear on how this creates either way more success or can actually be a detriment if it's not put in place. When we're talking about professional development, I want to just start with, why exactly do field coaches kind of need that professional development? And maybe this might seem obvious to some people, but it's a really unique role in that way, where I think there's a lot of really good reasons from a revenue point of view, from a training point of view. Like there's a lot that goes into why continued education and training and development is so valuable for this position specifically.
Yeah, well, kind of going back to what I said a minute ago about the kinds of challenges that can arise. And they've usually been trained initially in some format, and maybe they've even had really good initial training, like the field coaches. Yeah. But if they don't use those skills, then they might become like dusty and need some polish, right? So, you could sit there and go through all kinds of training, but then you don't use it and you forget, and so then these new challenges arise. And this kinds of challenges we see, I've mentioned, resistant franchisee, We talk a lot about the old guard, sort of legacy franchisees, who have been there, and especially because these legacy or old guard franchisees, because they've been there since the early days, they often had to figure things out on their own because they didn't really have even this level of support they might now be able to access. And so they're like, why would I need you? Like, I've had to figure this out. Like, how could you possibly help me? So these kinds of challenges arise. Or another one is like, when a franchisee is going through a big life change, like a divorce, or there's death, or there's a mental health issue, like all these things can come up all the time. And so if you just train them initially and then don't offer any professional development how to deal with these things, then you're missing that opportunity. And new ways of dealing with challenges come up. And so just like with franchisees or anyone that we think about, growing, continuing education is like sharpening a knife, right? Like the knife might get a little dull. So then you sharpen and now you're like, oh, this is so much better. Like it goes right through the tomato, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so, yeah, it really does then help to unlock, we talk about unlocking the hidden profitability in a franchise system. Otherwise, again, if field coaches can't deal with these challenges, then you're really missing out on getting the franchisee the success that you want them to have so that they're engaged and profitable.
And I think, and this is not at all, what I'm about to say is not at all saying that not all roles within any business deserve and would benefit from ongoing training and development and education. That I think kind of goes without saying, especially in this more modern way of thinking about business and development and team building and all those things, retaining staff, all those pieces. So obviously all those things are so important. But one thing I heard, I think it was you mentioned it actually at one point, you were saying to one of the reasons this role specifically is different in a certain way is that they are often the people who are having the most face time with your owners. And so to have these people be they're not in charge of creating owner success in the way, if a franchisee is really set on not setting goals and not following through on systems and those kinds of things, that's obviously a different situation. But a lot of franchisees are really hungry for support, for coaching, for development. And your coaches or your area managers or whatever we want to call them, those are the people who are helping them and having those kinds of touch points. And so it is interesting, like how much more investing in that development can kind of impact those owners right away. And you're totally right. Like even, conflict resolution management, those kinds of things change over time. And so to kind of train somebody and then have it be years later and have maybe these really tricky situations be coming up and have no resource available, and then they're the ones having the one-on-one contact with your owners most often, feels like a missed opportunity in terms of creating happiness, increasing profits, increasing revenue, which is of course going to benefit you as a home office team, like you as the system. So yeah, I think that's something really interesting about that role that you pointed out at a roundtable, I think once, that has really stuck with me. I'm like, oh, that's why that role it's so important, even compared to, the importance in general of team building and professional development across the board. So anyway, that was a little key takeaway from a different conversation you and I had a while ago. But I'm curious when it comes to creating these kinds of development opportunities, or what kinds of development is available to field coaches. I'm wondering if maybe you can give a couple solid tangibles on that for anyone who's listening, who's going, okay, I understand the value. How would I do that? Or what's available? Or what would be some good ideas to kind of have in place for our coaches ongoing?
Well, if I'm speaking to what we offer at AC Inc., then is that what we're talking, like specifically what we offer? Is that what you're thinking here?
Yeah, all of the above. I think it's always nice when we kind of highlight, there are definitely things that AC Inc. does help with. So feel free to obviously give shout outs to those. And then also just in general, like if you think peer-to-peer is really important. So even things if people aren't quite at the point where they can invest maybe in further development, but even just some ideas in general would be super helpful, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So just from a services standpoint, we do offer our field coach roundtables, which are weekly, and they're very, they're value driven. And I'll give examples of what we talk about at those roundtables, but they're value driven, but yet sort of informal so that people feel comfortable talking with each other. And they're specifically only for field coaches. So no VP or COO level C-suites, because we want people to feel very comfortable. So whether that's, again, coming to AC roundtables or something else, remember that field coaches might need that kind of a space if you can provide that for them somehow. And then, of course, we've got the custom coaching that we do and using our curriculum. So we've got the training and onboarding curriculum for field coaches, and then the ongoing curriculum. So in the ongoing curriculum, of course, and initial, modern leadership comes up a lot. So as a more generic way to answer this question, then modern leadership is a big one. So when I say that, I'm talking about things like situational leadership, active listening, knowing how to create buy-in when there's resistance. You mentioned conflict resolution. So those kind of all fall under modern leadership. Another category that we see a real, we're just really, really big on the idea of proactive coaching franchisees. So rather than, we see a lot of field coaches just taught to just kind of be there for them. They show up to answer the questions, right? They just show up. What can I help you with? And they're being like a firefighter. Like, I got my firefighter hat on. I'm ready to like answer your questions. And then the field coach feels really good at the end in a way, because they're like, I was able to help you. But when their eyes are open to the idea of like actually proactively coaching, but they just don't know how to do that, they need support on how to do that. Like finding out from the franchisee where they want to get to, and then awesome, let's come together and figure out together how we can get you there. That's something we see people really needing help with. And as field coaches go. So, how to get franchisees to even share their goals and even know their goals. We see or hear a lot of field coaches say, like, what do you do when a franchisee doesn't want to share their goals or doesn't know what they even are? And then so, okay, we figure that out. How do you help a franchisee reverse engineer it into steps? What if those steps aren't a fit? Like, what if the number one way to get business is for a franchisee is some kind of networking thing and they absolutely hate it? Well, now you got to either teach them how to do networking or figure out an alternative option for them. So that's using a lot of like creative power. And then, so really, how do you also just facilitate even a proactive coaching session itself? How do you start the call? What do you say then? So I kind of went through a little bit of how our services, but those are the things we're seeing where field coaches are really needing a lot of support. They're just like hungry for more.
Yeah. And just to even break that down into a couple, I think the big thing being, peer-to-peer is a huge opportunity for how you can kind of provide that. And the AC field coach roundtables are those peer-to-peer sessions and have a whole bunch of field coaches from different brands. So that's an amazing resource for sure. But yeah, that peer-to-peer, so learning from one another is such a huge one. The other piece being that mindset, leadership, those kinds of things. So having other opportunities for them to work on those skills or learn more about what else. We talked about conflict resolution. We talked about modern leadership, which we do actually have an episode about that we're doing. So I'm very excited to share that as well. Maybe I'll link that in the notes. But yeah, so kind of there's peer-to-peer, there's the mindset and leadership. And then you were saying the like tactical. So like how are we structuring calls? Is there a way we could structure them better? Conflict resolution when it comes to like a franchisee maybe not being open. So working on those kinds of tools for how you open people up or get buy-in and engagement. So more of the tactical side. So you've got kind of mindset leadership, the tactical, and then that peer-to-peer is a really great way to kind of help with some of those pieces by leveraging maybe as we like to say, the collective genius of maybe a few different brands use, or even what other coaches within your brand use. If you have a whole bunch of field coaches who are all using different tools or have different perspectives.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is, we're talking right now about peer-to-peer as field coaches, and it's interesting because franchisors seem to understand how important it is for their franchisees to have peer-to-peer learning, because they all say like franchisees listen to each other more than they listen to us. Well, it applies to field coaches too. Like, they learn so much from each other when they're sitting there at the table, at the round table. And especially like most of these people didn't know each other before this round table, which is so neat that they're meeting each other. And they're going, okay, so you're a field coach in that brand and you guys do the same thing. Oh my gosh, that's such a relief. Like, I'm not doing something wrong. That even like, I think one of the biggest things is that these field coaches, they get confidence. Their confidence gets built by being with their peers and validated and like you said, all these the tactical and the leadership, like doing, okay, I'm on the right track. So that is how it leads to moving the needle, that they can actually go in confidently and get franchisees to do what they need to do.
I love that so much. Yeah. No, it's honestly the best. And I hear your passion every time you come out of those roundtables too. And it really is so incredible. And it's a great group of humans. And I unfortunately we do have to hop off. We are at the end of our time here today. But yeah, I can't wait to have even more conversations around this topic because I think it's just so valuable to talk about specific to roles, kind of what options are available when it comes to improving, like constant improvement. And if we want that for our franchisees, we want that, of course, for our coaches. We want that for our marketing team. We want that for so many pieces of this franchise system in order to continue leveling up and growing together and becoming better. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of touch on even more of those. And I'll link actually a couple past episodes we've done with other members of the team about professional development just across the board, just because I think it is such an awesome topic and it's such a good reminder. And we have some really good tangibles in some of those episodes as well. So I'll link those in the show notes if anyone's interested. And anything else you want to add before we finish up for the day?
Just, I think it's so important that people understand the value of the field coach role. And our goal is really to help franchisors recognize that and either invest more in, who they're bringing on to the team, and not just who, but how they're finding them and, or how they're taking care of those people. Because again, it is a tough job. I think I have some PTSD myself from being yelled at and just being, almost ridiculed, like, oh yeah, right, as if you're going to teach me something. So I hope that we get through to some people and that they recognize that this is a real opportunity, and again, to create that hit, or to unlock that hidden profitability in a franchise. So thanks for the opportunity for me to have my passion moment of what I love. And I'm excited to keep going.
A wonderful episode. Thank you so much. And if anyone is interested in any of the AC roundtables, the professional development for field coaches, marketers, we have our free established and emerging groups. You can get all the details for all of them at angelacote.com/roundtables. And Angela, go be awesome.
Go be awesome.